I'm going to share with you an easy way to cut an extremely short, pixie, cute haircut. Now, in this instance, my client already has short hair, so it's kind of difficult to use the clips. They get cumbersome. So by adding a little bit of mousse in my hands and then rubbing it through the hair, it just helps as I'm working through the haircut and dividing it off. Having mousse in the hair helps to keep the hair where I comb it and keeps it nicely separated without using clips. Now in this instance, I am mapping out the haircut. You will always see me doing that. I am mapping it out right below the parietal ridge down to the occipital bone. Now because she wanted it extremely short, I chose to use the clippers. This is a client of mine that I've been working on for quite a few years, and we usually use my fingers. But she wanted it tighter. So I chose to use the clippers. And in this instance, I decided to use a guard, and I chose a number 3 guard. As you can see, I'm using my comb just to kind of hold the hair up away from the clippers to ensure that I do not cut them, to cut that hair there. Because I mapped it out, I visually can see where I'm going to be cutting really tight. And when I'm going in with the clippers, I'm holding it right up next to the head. And then as I come up to the parietal ridge where I want to stop, I'm just kind of angling it out. You can see just by moving my wrist, that little arcing movement of my wrist helps create a soft blend where we're going to go from shorter to longer. Now, if you notice, I'm going through the hair here in different directions. I'm moving up from the bottom, and then I'm going back in and kind of moving toward the face, and then kind of angling back a little. I'm doing this because the hair has different growth patterns. Some areas it grows more forward, sometimes it grows more to the side. So by going in with your clippers, in different directions, it just ensures that you're not going to miss any hair and you're going to have inconsistencies in your haircut just by doing this. Here again, I also have my client tilt her head down so it gives me a flatter surface to cut with when I'm working with the clippers. Now, once I've cut all the nape area and all the exterior around the ear, it's time to do some detailing. In this instance, this client, she doesn't want any fringy soft edges in the haircut. So I'm taking my little edge trimmer clippers here and going around the edges and trimming that off. And then just to create even a softer blend, just taking my comb in there at an angle, you can see it just, by tilting the comb, you're taking it and you're going from really short and kind of blending it into the length that we established using the clippers with the guard. And when you need to get in behind the ear, just by using your finger, pushing that ear forward and tucking that comb in and having the back of the comb touch the head and then angling the comb out helps you to get a softer blend and get in really tight there where you want it to, so it just meets right at the ear there. And here I'm just using a little bit of a scissor over comb just to here again just to create the blend, and I'm working my way down to the nape. Everybody's neckline is going to be just a little bit different. So by using the comb, it helps you just to kind of create that nice flow all the way down to the nape and giving a natural hairline. Here again, you can see I'm using my comb and adding tension on that hair just to make sure that I get a nice clean edge on the haircut, because I want it nice and tight there around the ear. So that's a really good little tip there for you, to use your comb on the and use the finer side of the comb to create that tension, because you want to have some tension on the hair when you're working with your clippers. Here again, you can see how I push the hair forward with my comb just to make sure it's nice and clean around the hairline area. And then see how I pull the hair with the ear with my fingers just to get it away so I can get that hair nice and tight. And then going in with my left hand, pulling the ear forward just helps you to be able to get in nice and tight behind the ear. And there again, pulling the ear away, setting the comb in on the head shape and having the back of the comb and angling the teeth out. That's going to give you the nice progression from extremely tight and blending into the established length that we established when we used our clippers with a number 3 guard. And here, just going in and just fine tuning and making sure that we've got all the little edges, all the little hairs off. And then going in on the nape, just cleaning up the nape area so that we get a nice fade into her hairline. I didn't want a strong line in the back. I just wanted her natural hairline. She did not want any softness or fringe, but she didn't want it, a severe line as well. So just by using your comb, going in, you can see how I angle it out. And then afterwards, going back in with my razor, this just creates a softer edge. Being that this is a woman, I didn't want it to look too masculine. So going in and just using the edge of my razor, my feather razor, and going back over what I cut with the clippers, it just creates a softness. So I'm just lifting the hair up with my comb and kind of going over it with my razor. It just kind of creates a softer, flowy edge, so it's not so clipper looking, so to speak. And here, just going in and just eyeing it and seeing what my eye likes and using the tip of my razor to help create a little softer edge on the hairline. Now it's time to go back in where we mapped it out, right on the parietal ridge, down to the occipital bone, and I'm using a razor here. It just creates a softer graduation. As you can see, we are graduating here to create some roundness. We're blending the interior into the exterior, and using a razor really helps create a softer blend. As you can see, I'm using the wide teeth of my comb and creating my section. I'm making sure that the section I'm taking is not large. It's very fine so I can see what I cut before. And I'm holding it with my fingers with tension, pulling it out past where I want to cut so I can see my guide, and then just going in with my razor kind of at an angle and just kind of feathering that hair off. Making sure that you are out at least a 45-degree angle and above. It depends on how much of a weight line you want to have here. I want a soft weight line, but I don't want it, I want it a little bit heavy as well. She wanted to see a definite difference between the nape and the top, so I made sure that I kept my hands at a 45-degree angle so that you could definitely see that weight building up, as you can see here when I'm cutting. And you can see how just by mapping it out to begin with, it just sets you up for success so that you know where your weight line is. Now I'm separating the frontal bone from the rest of the haircut or the head shape, because I want to go in here and establish the length on the apex going back to the crown. And here I'm using my scissors here and point cutting it. And I'm cutting it just to where I get a nice bounce. Here I'm just checking it to see, is this the length I want? Is this the right amount of bounce I want? Really paying attention to the crown area, because remember, in the crown area you have a lot of calyx and movement in that area, and you want to make sure that you're not getting it too short so that you lose that nice rounded shape that is so pretty there in the crown. And I just always say here too, to make sure before you start your haircut that you do take the time to feel the head shape, because sometimes that crown area, it can be a little bit, more protruding, and you need to be aware of that before you go in. Here, I'm just doing a rounded layer. I've established my guide from the apex all the way down to the end of my graduation area there, right at the occipital bone. And I'm just using a pivoting and traveling guide. The back of the head is round, so I'm just taking a little bit at the center and working around. You can see here, it's a little better point view here. I'm just taking a pivoting all around the crown area until I reach the side, and taking enough section each time that I can see my last section so I don't get lost. And then just checking for balance and pop. And as you're working in and past the ear there, when the hair gets, the head shape gets flattered, then take vertical sections with a traveling guide. You have a guide at the bottom that you established where you built that weight up, and you established a guide in the top of the head when you created your guide. So you have a point, you know where you're going from point A to point B, and you're not going to get lost. That's why mapping it out and working in a disciplined manner always keeps you on point with your haircut. Now here, as we move in around to the frontal bone, then you move back in to pivoting guide again. When you work on a pivoting section on the round of the head, it just makes sure that you don't cut hair around the face that you want in your haircut. And here I'm just kind of going back the opposite way and just double checking to see if there's any points. And then following up on the opposite side, I had a camera set up at my station here while I was doing my client. So, and I apologize for some of the areas you can't see. But here you're getting a little bit better view of working with a pivoting guide. I'm going back through the center and creating my first section on the right side. I've already established my guide, and now I'm working on a pivot. I can see where I need to start and where I'm headed. And I'm working with the round of the head. Being aware of that. Sometimes just rounding your fingers too kind of creates a softer line as well. So try to work in a relaxed manner. You know, try not to have your fingers so stiff as you're working. You can see I'm just taking little sections. I'm not cutting past the second knuckle. That's when you start to get into cutting your fingers or your skin a little bit. So just be aware of that. Don't cut past your second knuckle. Here again, I'm also spraying it, getting it wet again. As it gets drier, it's harder to control that short hair. So spraying it down and keeping it wet. And if you notice, I'm keeping it wet enough to control it, but not so wet that I can't see how the hair wants to live. I like to say that I'm letting the hair talk to me. I like to see and be aware of the bounce of the hair. It just helps you to not cut the hair too short. It helps you just keep your eye on how the hair is shaping up. If it's too wet, you can't see how it wants to live. You can see it's shaping up nicely. Now, as we're moving into the side of the head by the ear, the head gets flatter. So here we are. We're moving away from a pivoting guide and working with vertical sections. There again, pulling it straight out from the head and making sure I take just fine enough sections that I can see my guide and my last section that I cut. That way I never get lost, and it keeps you on point when you're cutting. There again, you can see just by working in a disciplined manner, we know where we're headed because we created a guide, and we know where to start because we created that weight line where we want the shape of the haircut to kind of round out on the sides of the head. Now, as you can see, I'm coming here, getting close to the frontal bone that we had parted off. So I'm being aware not to cut in there because that's where it kind of makes or breaks your haircut here. You know, if you cut too much off that front and you wanted it longer, it's going to change the whole vibe of your haircut. So be aware of that. Now we're moving into the frontal bone. We're going to, we've established the length in the fringe. We've already established the guide in the apex. So now we're just going to cut from the fringe area and go back to that guide that we created on the apex. So we're creating that center guide, And then because we're working off the round of the head, what are we doing? We're working on a pivot again. Taking some of that last guide with us and taking a bit of a section with us so that we can see our guide so we don't get lost in our haircut, and walking our hands up to the guide that we established in the apex and working on a pivoting guide, all our pivoting section with a traveling guide until we meet that last section that we cut previously on the side of the head. Being aware here too, be very aware of the recession area. There again, you can see how that just blends right in. Now you can see my body, I didn't move to the other side of the head. I'm still staying on the left side of her head, but moving her head shape, or moving her head. Don't be afraid to move your client's head. And I'm making sure that her head, if you notice, is straight up and down as well. There again, you can really see how I'm working with a pivoting section and a traveling guide. I always know where I'm going. I can see my guide. Here again, I apologize for it being out of view, but like I said, I was videotaping this while I was working in the salon because I just wanted to show you it. All right. So now I'm just looking and seeing aesthetically, how do I like that? Do I like the length in the fringe? Do I need to add anything else? And I've decided I don't. So here I am. I'm just going through and drying it. Moving the blow dryer, drying it from one side to the other really just helps smooth it out and mold that haircut to the head shape, and going back and forth, not letting it cool too long on one side than the other side. This just helps get that hair out from the head, gives it volume, and the head's naturally round. So following it through with your vent brush and having your dryer right on top of it with the nozzle gets it nice and smooth, but gives it that nice rounded edge without too much curl. Sometimes when you use a round brush on here, it makes it look too Betty Boop and old-fashioned, and she likes it piecey and just a smoother effect on the hair. So I like to use a vent brush too because the air is able to travel through the brush better. And then I follow up with my fingers just to make sure that it's not too smooth. As I'm doing this, I'm checking to see for balance and how it's laying. And then I usually add, after this, I'll add a bit of a paste to my hands and work it through, and then just work it through the entire head shape from roots to ends. I like to use a paste that has a holding ability to it, so it's got a lot of palleability to it, and gives a lot of definition and pieciness to the haircut. It's almost like mascara. Without it, your eyes just don't look the same. It's the same on a short haircut. You can see how it just pieces it out and just makes it look just fabulous. I think she wears this haircut so beautifully, and you can see the nice pieciness that's happening and the nice definition and shape to it. She's happy.